Hello, Africa. This is Business Africa, and I am Ignatius Ano. Our top stories. A quest for survival as African airlines make tremendous strides to weather pressure posed by the coronavirus. We examine what worked at the peak of the pandemic. Badly needed relief for rural folks in eastern Cameroon as a cooperative rallies women to embrace subsistence farming. And Africa's most populous country becomes the second largest Bitcoin market in the world, but what's driving up cryptocurrency popularity in Africa? Details right now. Border closures, quarantines and lockdowns. These strict measures to fight the pandemic nearly brought domestic and international travels to a standstill in 2020. But despite the economic pressures felt by African airlines, there was a resolve for survival. Ethiopian Airlines, Africa's largest commercial airline, quickly diversified to cargo. It avoided seeking bailouts and laying off full-time employees. In Northern Africa, Emirates offered free insurance packages to woo customers back into flight. We'll speak to an aviation expert, but first, here's a report that captures their survival story.
Passenger traffic for air transport dropped at the peak of the COVID-19 pandemic in 2020. The International Air Transport Association said traffic in Africa fell by 89%. Nevertheless, carriers on the continent made tremendous strides to survive. Africa's leading carrier, Ethiopian Airlines, managed to close the year with profits of around 2.85 billion euros at the end of June. Still a shortfall compared to the forecast of over 3 billion euros. The damage was largely salvaged as the airline transformed part of its passenger fleet into freight to compensate for the sudden drop in passenger traffic, coupled with a drastic cost-cutting policy. Air Maroc devised innovative ways to stay afloat, as it was also hard hit by the global health crisis. The Moroccan national carrier offered its customers free insurance with the purchase of a ticket, assuming the coverage of medical expenses of up to 150,000 euros in the event of coronavirus infections contracted during an international trip between December 1st, 2020 to May 31st, 2021. Elsewhere on the continent, Ghana signed a memorandum of understanding with Egypt Air in October 2020 for a future national carrier. No date has been set for an official launch. Bujumbura said 2021 for the rebirth of a state-owned airline, more than a decade since Air Burundi filed for bankruptcy.
Pothago Mogapele is an aviation expert in Johannesburg, South Africa. He joins us to help us understand what lies ahead for airline companies on the continent in 2021. Pothago, thank you so much for agreeing to talk with us. So first of all, a very challenging year for airline operators on the continent at the peak of the pandemic in 2020. And despite the economic pressure, they've weathered the storm. What worked?
The aviation industry in Africa has really seen a turbulence time like any other countries or continent around the world. And I think Africa was not spared. But if you look at how we have done things in Africa, in trying to keep our planes in the skies and making sure that we connect Africa, that has always been difficult to do. We have managed to do that very well. Through Ethiopian Airlines, that we know very well that they are doing fantastically well. At the same time, you're moving on to southern tip of Africa, which is South African Airways being the leader as well in the aviation industry. We know that it has been under business rescue. Back to East Africa, Kenyan Airways as well is doing fantastically well, moving around the world, moving around the continent, connecting Africa. You would remember that Ethiopian Airlines was given an opportunity to transport all the PPE to distribute it around the African continent. And you would imagine that coming out of China and all the way into the Africa, it has been a booming business.
These African airlines have not sought any bailout. In this new year, do you think that government should provide some support to cushion them? And how crucial would that support be?
South African government have pumped a lot of money into South African Airways, which has not started flying. But the problems of South African Airways have not been COVID-related at all. I think we would see more of governments pumping money into these airlines because with the second wave hitting, you would realize that most countries have banned some of these airlines going into their countries. But at this stage, it's only South Africa that has been banned from other countries going there.
So finally, what impact would this have on the cost for the ordinary passenger, even as airline operators navigate a rather tumultuous time?
The lowest cost during the pandemic now, if you travel into Africa, you would pay much lesser than you would pay during the normal season where everybody's flying around. So the price structures of the airlines and the costs to the passengers are still relatively going to be cheaper. Whether you look at the kind of the service they are rendering to you or you compare it into the premium service, that is another question to be answered. But at this stage, what Africans need is to connect in between with the reasonable costs that they can find within the African continent and the world at large.
Puthego, it's been a pleasure having you on the program. Thank you.
Much appreciated. Thank you.
All right, so Puthego Mogapele is an aviation expert speaking to us from Johannesburg in South Africa. You're watching Business Africa. We'll be right back. Hello again. You're welcome back to the program. And I am Ignatius Ano. Let's now head into Central Africa. In the east of Cameroon, a cooperative is rallying women to see subsistence farming as an alternative source of livelihood. The village of Gbanam is predominantly a mining community. Thanks to a pilot project run by an NGO, these women can now look forward to accumulating resources for future use. It's an activity they have not been economically empowered enough to do for years.
For years, it was impossible for these women in the village of Gbanam in eastern Cameroon to accumulate money for future use. The women can now save as they embrace subsistence farming as an alternative source of livelihood. Initially, we were all in the mining business before Fodor came to us with alternatives. I realized that the idea of joining together in a cooperative to carry out alternative activities is important because you can have gold and even silver, but you don't have anything to eat. But if I am growing cassava and plantains, even if I am sick, I can send someone to the field to bring some so that it helps to feed the children. But if you have gold and silver and you don't have access to food, it's worse. You can't eat that gold. The project is run by local NGO, Fodor. The women of Gbanam have been strongly mobilized through our sensitization. With the support of the chief, we helped them organize themselves into a mining cooperative. We supported them to set up agriculture, particularly with plantain trees and cassava cultivation. The pilot project has proved successful and has brought badly needed relief to locals. Who would have thought that in the Gbanam village, located 200 kilometers from Menganga in the Adamawa region, that women could have accepted farming as an alternative source of livelihood besides mining? Agriculture that no longer serves as just a means of subsistence, but also as a means for development within their families and communities. An initiative that Fodor aims to replicate in surrounding communities. From Gbanam for Africanews, I am.
Nigeria has become the second largest Bitcoin market in the world after the United States. That's according to Paxful, a leading Bitcoin trading platform. Nigerians often get restricted on global platforms like PayPal. PayPal doesn't allow payments to the country. That, among other reasons, may be why Nigerians are opting to trade, buy or sell using blockchain technology. Kenya came in at number 8, with South Africa placing 10th of the world's top Bitcoin market.
A new currency is rising in Africa. Crypto. Nigeria is now the second biggest Bitcoin market in the world, according to Bitcoin trading platform Paxful. In the last 5 years, Nigeria has traded over 60,000 Bitcoins, valued at more than $560 million. So why has cryptocurrency become so popular? Transactions are stored in a database called blockchain, meaning they can happen anywhere in the world. Another reason is it cuts out banks and the middleman. That was useful during the police brutality protests in Nigeria in October, when protesters could not use local payment platforms to collect donations, and so they switched to Bitcoin. Lastly, Bitcoin can also be cheaper, as banks and international platforms can charge high fees for transactions. And if currencies are unstable or inflation is high, then many people may prefer to switch to crypto, which is not regulated by the government. Cryptocurrencies are expected to get even more popular, especially with the growing generation of young entrepreneurs.
And that's it for Business Africa. You can be a part of the program via our various social media handles. Follow me on Twitter at Ignatius Ano. Also, head over to Africanews.com for more. Thank you for watching and goodbye.